Welcome to episode 5 of The Naked Truth. Now, today is going to be a slightly different episode. We're going to be talking about technology, or rather, um, the benefits or woes of technology, so to speak. So, the title is Have We Become Too Reliant on Technology? Now, the backdrop of this is the cyber attack on the HSE a couple of weeks ago. And the agency is still suffering from it. Just a bit of background on that. Some cyber gang, cyber crime syndicate in Russia hacked into the HSE, that's a health service executive of Ireland, the network, and they installed or whatever they infected it with ransomware. This means anything that is open for data breach at the moment, and they as the word says, ransomware. So they're looking for ransom on this, and allegedly they were looking for $20 million to be paid to them for them to release an encrypted key so that the data will be secure again. Now, the HSE has decided not to pay that, and I applaud that, because if once you start paying ransom to these people, you'll open up for everything and everyone to do the same thing. So that's a good thing. However, then to me the question came up as well: have we become too reliant on technology? If something like this could happen, some malicious gang just can hack into your system and more or less disable your whole business. And then it's going through a few things over the history of the last couple of months, and we are so reliant on something that's called the smartphone. I mean, I have one myself, as you can see, the smartphone. And I think nearly everyone on this planet probably will have, well, at least the Western world or the developed world will have a smartphone in some shape or form. And I mean, I'm just as guilty as anyone else. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love my smartphone, I love the technology. But has it come to a time where we maybe should send it back to a place where it's not as prominent as it is now, because it's controlling our life at the moment. And it's very easy for anyone to hack into your phones, your computers, your laptops, and then it will cause havoc. Not only havoc, it will cause you mental issues as well, mental health issues, because you panic, you don't know what to do, where to go, because everything is in those little devices we have. Not only do we have pictures on it, we have our phone contacts. A lot of people have bank details on it. They even do their banking online with like an app called Revolut. That's like an online bank in your pocket. People have all sorts of data on their laptops, on their smartphones, or on their tablets. And I mean, it only takes a simple thing like that, and that can destroy everything on your phone or tablet. So that's why I was wondering: have we become too reliant? And I notice of going back years and years and years, because I'm in my 50s now. So when I was growing up, we had no smartphone. A lot of people don't even had a phone at home. They might have some neighbor who had a phone, and if they wanted to be contacted, you could ring the neighbor, or they would get to them to speak to the person. And it was only, even when you would get a phone, there wasn't a choice there. You would get a phone which was allocated to you by the telecom company. So usually it would be a white one. They might have some shade of cream or whatever, but in general they would be white, the old-fashioned phones as we see them on TV nowadays. And that would be it. You wouldn't have a choice. That's the only choice you got. Now, later on in the 80s and 90s, it opened up a bit more. You could pick your own landline phone. You can own your own phone. I remember I had a fancy one, a nice little red one. Looked very James Bond-esque. So yeah, but that was still very limited. You might have an option of about 6 or 7 phones and different kind of designs, but again, very limited. Not as it is nowadays, where you can have there's an awful lot of companies who make smartphones, even though they might all kind of have the same shape, but the contents of it and the software, they're all very greatly to very advanced. And some are just have the basics. So there's something there for everyone, or as they would say in late nature, something for everyone in the audience. So it has become very easy, very mobile, but that's just it. Has become too easy. Has become too mobile to carry around with. So I mean, regardless if you get hacked by a cybercrime gang, just imagine someone stealing your phone physically. Just imagine the anxiety that would cause for you. I mean, they don't just have your phone, your details. A lot of people have their whole lives in that. They have their work, their bank, you name it, their healthcare information. They have apps there to check their health as well. So I mean, maybe it's time for us to just step back a small bit and go back to how it was before. No, not completely back, of course, but just put the smartphone back in the press and only take it out every once in a while, just to use it as it was meant to be, a telecommunication device, just to ring someone and maybe check the text and take a picture. But that should be it. I think really there shouldn't be so much possibility there for you to put your whole life on a small device. But as I said, we are relying more and more on technology, not only on smartphones, but even for our news. We have become more and more reliant on technology. Before we would get our news via either the terrestrial TV on news channels, on the news bulletins, which might come up maybe 2 or 3 times a day, and that's it. And for written news, you would go buy your newspaper, or you get it delivered every day through your mailbox, and you would check your news that way. It might not be immediate, but it would be reliable, because there would be editors looking at the mail contents, the news contents, and they will verify and check and double check. No, sometimes this still went wrong, but in general, you could take it that the news you would read would be fairly reliable. Well, there's some newspapers, like for instance, the tabloids, like the Sun newspaper or the Mirror or whatever, they might not always be as reliable, because they would really rely on all their the catchy headlines to actually draw people in to buy the newspapers. But in general, the mainstream newspapers, they would be quite reliable. The same as for the news media on TV would be quite reliable, because everything would have been checked. And again, it would not be immediate, but it would be checked. There might sometimes be a day may have passed after an event had happened, but at least all the details, all the data would be there, which would have been investigated. The data would have been analyzed before they would come up with a story. But nowadays, you can just publish a story whenever, wherever, and however you want. You don't have to check it. If you think that's the right one, you just pass it on via your social media. Like this week, last week, someone sent me an article on social media, and it kind of, let's check up the title again now, because I want to make sure It is the right title I am telling you. The title was, 1 second. It was Why Exercise is So Difficult for People with Rheumatoid Arthritis. That was the title. And it came in via a WhatsApp message again, and I got via the Irish Times website. No. No, I'm heavily involved in the rheumatoid arthritis movement, or the Arthritis Ireland charity in Ireland. And when I saw that, I thought, oh, this is ridiculous. This is going to cause so much havoc to people who have rheumatoid arthritis. They see the headlines, and straight away they will think, oh, see, it's bad for me. Exercising is bad for me. I shouldn't be doing it. And that's the worst thing they could do. Exercising is the one thing that they should be doing if you have any form of chronic illness, any form of arthritis. Exercise is the best thing you could do for it. It doesn't have to be a gym membership, but it could be just going for a walk. Even if you go shopping, park the car a bit further away as you usually do, and walk a bit longer towards the shop. It doesn't have to be an extensive fitness program. Some of these things you can do sitting on your chair, but you have to exercise. And when I read it then, that was the headline. I'll read it again for you. The headline was, Why Exercise is So Difficult for People with Rheumatoid Arthritis. Now, when I went into the actual article, and again, this is sent via a WhatsApp message from the Irish Times or website, when I actually went into the article and clicked on the links, that gave a completely different story. It mentioned a study had been conducted among some, not a lot of people, not none of participants, but some post-menopausal women, and it was found out that exercise could be harmful for them, and didn't even say which kind of exercise. It just said exercise in general, and also kind of mentioned, well, it wasn't conclusively proven that was only due to their rheumatoid arthritis. It could be due to the age or any other factor as well. So, but you would have to go into the actual article, and you have to click on the links to read the follow-up study on this. But nowadays, with immediate news being sent through social media, people don't do that. They look at the headlines, and that's enough for a lot of people. They only go by headlines, and they don't need more than that. They make up their own minds based on a couple of words, rather than going into a deep data analysis. Now, I did contact the actual author of that piece, and I explained to her how devastating this could be to people with rheumatoid arthritis, because they might just think, oh, I'm not going to do exercise now because this so-called I call it the so-called very reliable source, the Irish Times, which it used to be, by the way, but for the last couple of years it has become more tabloid. But it used to be a reliable newspaper. They told me not to exercise because it's bad for you. So that's just an example, which kind of touched me directly as well. But that's what people go by. They just go by headlines. And also, as I mentioned before, when I mentioned social media is controlled by something called algorithms. It's like a computer program which determines what is suitable for a particular social media outlet. For Facebook, for instance, they have algorithms, and if this algorithm finds something which is deemed to be against the community standards, it gets deleted, it gets thrown out, and no one really knows how these algorithms have been set up, because some stuff has been thrown out which is completely not against community standard. It's completely innocent stuff, but yet it's been thrown out. And for me, I do a lot of work on Holocaust. I used to post a lot of stuff on the Holocaust, all data verified, all historical facts, nothing there for me. Maybe one or two words I felt about, I wanted to add in there, but all nothing made up. It was all factual, backed up, and there's nothing, never anything offensive or offended, because it's history. It's not like I made this up. It was history. It's already there. It was written before. I just kind of not. I looked at the data more than anything else and kind of focus on the data rather than all the fancy language sometimes which was used by historians. I just looked at the pure data and used that from the Holocaust blogs. I still do. But for some reason, I was kicked out of Facebook, and I can't even set up a new account because I think they recognize, the algorithms recognize my IP address and won't even allow me to set up a new account. And I don't know why. I don't know what, even though I have some kind of suspicion, which I'll talk about later. But there's no way you can contact. I'm sorry, and I'm only using Facebook at the moment, but I know there's other social media outlets as well. They have a similar thing, but I haven't been banned from any of those yet. So, and I say yet because you never know. But Facebook has banned me based on, I presume, algorithms. Well, that's what I think anyhow, even though. But as I said, you can't contact anyone. There's no physical person you can talk to and explain the situation and ask why things were done. Or there's no email address you can send it to. There's no text you can send to. There's no phone number. There's no nothing. Which makes it very frustrating, I suppose, because it's people say, well, it's a private company and they should be able to do whatever they want. I don't believe that because, for instance, my internet provider is Virgin Media. If I have an issue with Virgin Media, for instance, I can call them. I can tell them, listen, this is what I have. This is my issue. Please, can you fix it? With Facebook, you can't. You cannot contact them and tell them this is an issue. Can you fix it? Okay, explain to me what I can do to fix it or what went wrong. But you can't. It's not there because they use the excuse of the algorithms. Having said that, recently I saw a documentary on TV, on the Irish TV, and it was about some people who worked for an outsourced company that Facebook employs to monitor their contents, to moderate their contents. Now, I recognize one of them. And this person is known to be very anti-Israel. No, I'm not a political person. I don't care what you think, if you're pro or anti-Israel. Well, I do, but I'm not going to make too much of an issue about it. But this guy is very anti-Israel. And the fact that I write about Holocaust and the fact that he knows someone I know on Facebook, to me, 2 and 2 makes 4. To me, that's probably the reason why I'm no longer on Facebook. Now, I'm not going to mention his name, but I will be mentioning his name to the oversight board of Facebook because I think that's something they have set up recently. So I will be exploring that. But yeah, and that's how easy it is for someone. These people who moderate content, they should be completely apolitical. They should be non-biased. And this person, everyone knows him. A lot of people know him in Ireland. He's very biased and he makes no qualms about it. He says it. And yet he is able to work for, be the third company, but they are outsourced to moderate Facebook's contents. And to me, that's so wrong. I mean, they can be judged, jury, and execution all in one without any fear of being caught, any fear of repercussions against them. And I think that's something that should be looked into on a government base. No, but even if you look, and don't dwell too much on this, but even if you look at social media, for instance, or all these bigger, the big tech companies, for example, if you look at the likes of the owners of Facebook, like Zuckerberg and whoever owns Twitter, they all have said they won't allow their own children on the social media. Now that says enough. If they won't allow their own children on the social media platform, that stuff, the platforms they have created, that tells me enough that on how addictive this can be and on how unreliable it can be as well. The same for Elon Musk, for instance, the owner of Tesla cars. He recently said about artificial intelligence that he was very scared of it. He wouldn't trust himself. Yet he has a company that sells self-driving cars, autonomous cars, driven and used by, controlled by artificial intelligence. Now, a couple of years ago, about a year or two ago, there have been a few crashes with these vehicles, and those, I think, one or two fatal crashes as well. I mean, why in the first place do we need a self-driving car? I mean, to me, I have a car. I like to drive my car. So why should I be wanting to have a self-driving car? That defeats the purpose of me. If I don't want to drive myself, I will book a taxi, or I'll take a bus, or I'll take a train. Why should I buy a self-driving car? It defeats the purpose to me. No, even with my car, and I've noticed as well, this is more like old school technology, but yet something we rely on as well, a bit too much nowadays. Now, I've noticed now, my car is mostly in the drive now. I don't actually use it as much anymore. I really only use it to go shopping. Because once a week we do a big shopping, and that's the only time I use my car really. And occasionally I might give someone a lift, one of my children a lift to a bit place that's too far to walk. But that's about it. And because I don't want to be reliant on a vehicle, on a bit of technology all the time, because sometimes it takes away my peace as well, because we can be stuck in traffic, and I'm not the most patient person, believe it or not. And sometimes you see people doing things and it annoys you, it makes you angry. So I've decided maybe I don't need the car as much. I can walk. I live nearby everything, so I don't need the car to go where I need to go, except for maybe a longer journey, but that maybe once every 2 months or even less than that. So I don't need to go in my car every day, and I feel much happier for it. So because I'm not relying on this inanimate kind of things, it's non-personal thing. There's no personal connection to it. There's no. It's not a human being. It's not a human entity. It's not a physical entity you can communicate with. So I mean, I'm happy about that. So, and also with this whole social media, I'm kind of, in a way, I'm kind of happy that I'm kicked out of Facebook, because I feel happier now that I'm not on it anymore. Because when I see people who complain about it and all the things that are going on in the world, all these crazy theories that are going on, they all come from Facebook, believe it or not. And yet these theories, they're allowed to fester and to grow on this platform. None of them are backed up by data. Some of them are actually put there on purpose by people with a hidden agenda. If you look at, for instance, at Dr. Wakefield, he's came up with a lot of crazy ideas on MMR vaccines, for instance, say that it was causing autism. It's been disputed all along. And this data has been proven that he was wrong. No, what a lot of people do not realize at the time, that at the same time he was saying how bad these MMR vaccines were, he was working on a measles vaccine himself. And he was trying to sell that to pharmaceutical companies. So there's always something, when you see something on these platforms, don't just trust the headlines. go deeper into it. Do your own research first and look at all aspects of the story and look at who's behind it and what's their reasoning behind it and who's funding them. So look at all those things behind it. So again, a couple of years ago, that Lancet published a report on how bad eating meat was and how bad it was for the environment. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm not going to judge by that. But the report that came out was conducted by some billionaire model. Okay, and she had invited a number of scientists to prove her point for her. And what they did, they flew all over the place. Even though one of the things was like on how bad flying was, how bad air travel was, but yet she flew them all over the place, all over the world to prove her point for her. This was published in a so-called reputable magazine. No, I think it's a lot of credit. For me, it has a lot of credit. But always don't look at the headlines. Look at what's behind it, who's funding them, what's their hidden agenda, because there's always a hidden agenda. If you see something on social media or any news outlet, usually there's some kind of hidden agenda behind it. It might be good, it might be bad, but there always is. So always check that before you just take it, that anything you see on the internet, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on whatever you have there, before you take anything for gospel, because half of the time or even more of the time it is not. It could be fabricated from something out of nothing. But that's where we are with technology. Technology has enabled this to be out there immediately. So I can make up a story now about anything. And if I find people crazy enough to believe me, it will go viral. And before you know it, you'll have some kind of thing that people believe. I've done it as an experiment. I made up some story, completely fabricated, and this is a couple of years ago. I posted on Facebook, and it went not viral, but it was shared by quite a few people, and that's a danger with these things nowadays, with the technology we have at the moment. So maybe we should just go back a small bit to a bit more physical technology, I suppose. Maybe have a newspaper again, but a really proper paper one, and just don't believe everything you see straight away. Question it, because with this current new technology, one thing that I find has disappeared is the ability of critical thinking. People are not able anymore to think critically or to question things. And even those who do, those who questions, they are attacked from all sides because no one else is thinking critically about the data they see. And some of these, as I said, these crazy things are believed. So that's it for this episode. So I hope you enjoyed it. So please, this is going to be also put on the learmedia.tv YouTube channel, as it's going to be on my one. So please subscribe to either of them. So check YouTube and check Lear Media, or just check me, Dirk de Klein. And please follow us, and hopefully you enjoyed this one. And we'll have one soon again. So this is Dirk de Klein for The Naked Truth, episode 5, Have You Become Too Reliant on Technology? Slán.